can head over to the course and fill out a. Oh, my internet is becoming unstable. Can fill out this choice activity about what type of Moodle admin you are, and or participate in the ask questions, answer questions. Some of this can be done after. And I've included the link to the slides I'll be using. Is my audio still poor? So is my audio okay right now? Okay, good. I tried to do some rejiggering with the networking. So hopefully, if I have internet issues and get disconnected, I will be working furiously just to get reconnected. So Oh, see what I can do about that. All right, testing one more time. Remain stable. Okay, so it's about, well, it's actually 2 minutes past starting time now. So I will go ahead and lose connection. Just people furiously try breaking up. Maybe let me do one more thing and then we'll really get started. All right, I'm trying one more time here. So can you guys hear me? Okay, I'm gonna plow through, and like I said, I apologize for this in advance, and we'll try to do the best we can. I've shared my slides, and I'm perfectly willing to talk to people outside the presentation to go over things that we don't miss, but let's plow in. So, oh, that's not what I meant to do. Okay. So the topic is Moodle administration made easy. My name is MichaelSpall. I work at Idaho State University. My background is in math and science. I've been doing this stuff since 2005. I'd encourage people to participate in the Moodle Users Association, either as an individual or through your organization. One of the things that makes some of these presentations a little bit difficult in one sense, but also good in another, is our diversity. We have different backgrounds, different roles. What type of administrator are you? What type of access do you have? Some people are working with a Moodle partner. Some people have installed Moodle themselves. And then some things to think about as a Moodle administrator, and I put accessibility number one for a reason that will become come clear as we go throughout. But the things to be thinking about as an administrator are accessibility, usability, teaching and learning, and then we have to think about things like that are performance related, and we have to think about accuracy and security, and then I'm open to other ideas as well. So one of the first things I wanted to show was kind of Byobu. That's Japanese for screen. Screen was kind of like the original program that did this. MtMux is another one. And what it does is it allows you to connect to a server. If this is part of your job, or maybe you're not the Moodle administrator that actually connects to servers, but you could kind of check in with the people that do. What it allows you to do is to have multiple screens. I could be jumping back and forth. And it also allows you to start a command and then disconnect from the server, go home, and pick up with it. Also, as I was having internet problems earlier, when you're connected through a regular terminal, if you have those internet problems, you've just barked your command and you don't know necessarily where it died at. But with this terminal multiplexer, oh shoot, I forgot to start sharing my screen again. Oh wow. Let me, yeah, I stopped sharing my screen. Oh. Where is Zoom? There we go. I stopped sharing screen when I had all those issues. Sorry about that. So essentially, Byobu, Screen, MtMux can be a lifesaver, because when you get disconnected from the internet, like I did earlier, you don't lose all your work. Things still run. You can disconnect and then reconnect and see all the feedback that you've that you've gotten. And I know not everyone that's a Moodle administrator is actually connecting to servers. That's part of our diversity. But I did present this little life-saving hack at another time, and a couple people actually thanked me for it. So that's why I included it here. So in my opinion, the best way to learn to be a site administrator, if you're new to it and everything, is to click on every item in site admission, think about the default, why would or did we change? And I'm gonna quick switch over and, oh, I gotta get to my right window. Well, maybe this will be the faster way. And what I mean by that is click site administration. And this is our test site. But go through and click all of these things and look through them. And again, if you're an administrator that might only have the manager role, or you're being hosted by someone and you don't have all these settings in here, you could also consider installing Moodle on your own desktop computer so that you could actually see all these settings. And it can give you insight, because someone else before you started working there may have made a decision with one idea in mind, and it's not the correct one now, and things change. And the rationale for making a decision in the past doesn't apply anymore. And you know, you can look at things like user policies, and you can look at whether you're allowing people access to their site in the guest role. There's just a lot of things. I mean, you know, I'm not going to spend the whole time going through every one, but going through these as a very beginning user, I think is like key to learning the position and understanding why we're making the decisions that we've made. So now I'd like to show you, theming is a big thing that gets a lot of people excited. And theming in Moodle has improved tons. It used to be not as easy to do as it is now. And one thing I'd like to keep in mind, and this is why I put accessibility at the start, is it is very easy to make changes in Moodle that make it less or not accessible. And one of the biggest ones is color and accessibility. So ISU has its official colors, and you can see this is our official orange here. But using this color as the color for like the link color or for colors for certain text is actually not at the highest level of accessibility. So we took this color, kept the same hue and same kind of angle on the color wheel, and we made it darker to keep the accessibility. And when we were looking at that, and there are a lot of tools from WCAG and these other sites that will tell you, analyze the colors you've picked, analyze your site. We were finding that for any kind of color you picked on the wheel, if you had a white background, there was really, one version is kind of an exaggeration, but when you look at it, there was really just a small area on that wheel that was accessible. And when you look at the 255 standard colors, there's really only one of those that was accessible for each of your colors. And if you switch to a dark background, there was really only one going in that direction. I think Boost is a very good theme, and you can look at Fordson and some of these other ones that are done by very good web developers. And they all have reasons, and they're very good, and I like them as well. But you can do a lot with just Boost. And if you're going, and I'm going to show you some things with the web developer tools here in a second. If you are adopting a theme, make sure the developer is reliable, like Chris is with the Fortson theme, and their other ones. But make sure that the web developer has a proven track record of keeping it up to date and is a reliable partner. And if you're developing your own theme, it does, I will say there's a steep learning curve to become proficient in using Boost and modifying Boost when you're going to the extreme of developing a brand new theme. But I'm going to show you how you can do a lot without going to that with in Boost. And then the other thing I would say is, if you're thinking of spending a lot of money developing a theme, Moodle 4.0 is coming out soon. And so maybe think about that. At least check to see what the developers' plans are for this big user interface change with 4.0. And so let me just break out of here. So this is our Moodle 3.11 test site, and it looks a lot like our productions site. And you can see the theming we've done with courses. I can turn editing on, and you can see some of the theming. This is a Moodle 3.9 site that is the basic site. So if I went to a course, this is kind of what you see. And to start making changes in your site, you'd want to start at site administration, appearance. You can look at themes, but looking at the Boost theme, you can pick a color for your links. And in advanced settings, you can add all this raw CSS code. And how do I know what I want to change? How do I know what I want to do? Well, you can turn on the web developer tool. And let me pick this example here. I need to move a little zoom screen here. So I could have this off, and I could come into, this works in Chrome or Firefox. You know, where you find it exactly is a little different. But you click Web Developer Tools. And as I move around here, I can see various things, and I can jump into parts and find exactly where I want to be. There are actually, as you get better at this, there's faster ways to jump around by like selecting things here and view selection source, or inspect the properties and things like that. But it's also good to just do this, because it helps you see how the things are nested. And here are the styles that are being applied. Now, if I take a little bit simpler example, this is a question, a particular question in Moodle. And what we noticed is, and we actually got comments from students about the default accessibility of this black, and it's not completely black, it's actually gray on this light blue. And you know, you can move around here. I've already done this to kind of speed up the process, but I've clicked in here, and then when I look you can see that the element is this one right here, and here are the colors. And I could actually start changing the colors by editing this and seeing the change immediately. And so if I pick 0, I made it dark orange. Now that's not quite what I really want to be doing. I can make it red, for instance. I could be playing around with those and figuring out the right colors. And then what if, you know, and here's changes making the text red, but what if I finally figured out what I want, and I'm actually stealing this from, this is the list of all the changes that we've made and someone's asking, can I find a list of the selectors somewhere? You can in the code, and if you look at Boost, the Boost code, and then you look at the Moodle code, you can find all these selectors. I don't know that they're documented so as well as you might like, and that's why often I recommend to people to organically get a install on your test system or on your own computer and start playing around. So looking at the code is good, but sometimes you can kind of develop a blank stare just looking at that code, and then actually go out and do something. So I stole this because this is our fix that we used before. And if I save changes here, we'll take a second. And sometimes you'll see there's a thing called theme developer mode. You would never want that turned on in production, but it would allow the changes to happen, be reflected faster. So if I come here and I reload this page, this is the change here. The text is darker, and it's hard to tell because I was monkeying around. So let me refresh this page. So this is, oh, now I've messed it up because I can't do the comparison. Oops, because that has the change in there. But if I undo this, we can see the comparison real quick. So this would be the default, and this is the change. The blue is subtly lighter, a little less green, and the text is darker. And then when you use those WCAG tools and some other accessibility tools, this one met kind of like a level 1. This meets a higher level of accessibility. So that's a change we made in our theme. Now, if we look at our test 3.9 site, here's the basic one. If I put in all our code from this file right here and save changes, and then I'm going to do a control reload here. You can see, and I've also made the change to the link color instead of the basic link color. All of a sudden, I've gone from this, and I'm looking at a theme that looks like our production site. And so there is a lot of stuff in here. And again, I don't mean to like overwhelm people. And so there's now no test at the end. You don't have to memorize this. But the changes we're making, you can see that some of these are to put in our branding, and some of it is to make the colors look more like ISU colors. And then some of them, as you get down to the bottom, are essentially workarounds and bug fixes, because browsers are constantly updating and certain things don't work. And here's one that we used to need, but we don't need anymore. But I kept the code around just so we can remember what's going on. And some of these have the Moodle bug tracker in there. And so again, I think a slow and steady pace of making small changes with a definite rationale and reason behind these changes is a smart way to go. And so looking at the time here, so the next thing to think about is you're making all these theme changes. You're adding all these CSS changes that I made in the additional. Oh, I'm not in presentation mode here. Apologize. All these changes we're making could be made in the code. You could create a totally different theme with these changes, and once you start making those changes, you could get farther and farther from the basic boost and make bigger changes that you can't just make in the CSS. But how do you manage all these changes? Well, Moodle.org and ISU and I think most people are using Git to manage the code changes. And in this amount of time, I can't tell you everything you need to know about Git and make you an expert, but I can answer questions in the forums, and we can meet after the presentation and talk a little bit. But Git versus tarballs, and tarballs is the nickname for zipped up, and tar is a thing that sticks files and that is a space-saving device. And the advantage is tracking all your changes. And there's also Git versus using the HTML interface for plugins. I'll show you the HTML interface here in just a second. And getting an account in GitHub, because that's what Moodle.org uses, but you could also use GitLab or Bitbucket. There's also the idea of using, with Git, you can accomplish so much through just your HTML web browser in GitHub anymore that you may not need to use the command line. You can also use a GUI interface to Git, but I think you can learn a lot through using the command line, and I don't think you need to be scared of the command line. We keep our main repository for all our ISU code private because there are some fixes in there, I shouldn't say fixes, some changes in there that that we need to keep private and are not of interest to people. And it also helps us so people don't know exactly what version we're running and what plugins that we have, but we make all our codes, all our code fixes and all our bug fixes public. So we have public GitHub and private GitHub. And I will say that if you're getting into using GitHub to maintain your changes, branching is cheap. That is a very good mantra. So make a branch off the main Moodle branch and call it, the main branches. I should just go over to show you GitHub real quick. And the main Moodle repository, if you look at the branches, they're named things like Moodle 3.8 stable, Moodle 3.9 stable. And this is what I mean by branching being cheap. I've created all these branches here to test different ideas, but it keeps things separate from Moodle 3.9 stable. And it makes it easy to contribute these branches to the branch that we actually implement in production. Oh, my chat window. Let me get rid of that real quick. Thank you. Sorry. And if you're actually fixing a bug, like this is a bug fix that I submitted a long time ago, you actually need to create branches for the current master branch and the currently supported branches. And so if you look, this is a plugin that Eric Merrill from Oakland University, Oakland, Detroit, just outside of Detroit, Oakland, Michigan, just outside of Detroit, maintains. And so I have a copy of this so that we can incorporate it into our Moodle, because we use this to integrate with Banner. It does all our SIS stuff. And so here's an example of a fix that I did, an incredibly simple fix, but important. So it's a simple one-liner, but I'd like to stress the importance of commit messages. So I think this is a decent commit message, considering the constraints that commit messages should have. There's a length constraint on the title, and we go into a little more detail in that. And then you can see some of the fixes that I've done before that are kind of ISU specific fixes. And this is, I think, looking now, this is something I did, years earlier. I think this is probably not as good a commit message as I could make. Instead of fix, it's kind of like there's a good rule to try to use a verb. I probably should have said respect, ignore email case when updating email. So this one could be improved. This one is a decent commit message. And this is a little bit bigger fix. And I go into a little more detail on what's going on. And if we look at, let me jump back in here. So this is a link to Chris Beams, who goes to in really good detail about how to write a commit message. I won't repeat everything that he says, and then he uses this exact same cartoon, this XKCD cartoon. Here is a good commit message. Here's a good one. By the third one, this is not very helpful. Misc bug fixes, what does that even mean? At least it's telling you it's bug fixes, and then he gets quite silly later. This is just some example commands, and I don't expect you to know these, but what I will say is this may look like complicated gobbledygook that I could, that you could never learn. But again, if I threw up algebra or calculus or English, it would all look that way. We all start at no knowledge of a subject and gradually get up there. So use the Moodle documentation and use the help that GitHub provides, the Git book, and start small. Create a branch so that you're not messing with everyone else's stuff, and you can start practicing. And this is a classic command right here, because I'm looking through the log for changes that I've authored, and specifically in this case for the, dealing with this plugin. But I do that so that I can stay consistent on my commit messages, and remind myself, what was a good commitment message? What's the bad commit message? And so here are some more examples of commit messages. This is where I'm merging the latest changes from Moodle core into our branch that has all our submodules in. And I say exactly which build. Here's where we're updating a plugin. Here's where I'm adding a plugin to test. And this is the exact command. So this right here, these last 3 lines are the exact command that you would use to do this. And I put that in there so I don't forget. And here are just a couple examples of real fixes for bugs that I've created in there. And so when you're actually fixing a bug for Moodle, there's certain rules that you need to follow that I don't need to necessarily follow when I'm making changes that aren't shared with the greater world. But you put the Moodle tracker item, kind of try to be real short with the subject, and then what you're doing, and then a little bit of an explanation of what's going on. And then if I look back here, when you're looking at diffs, you can see the exact commits. You can look at the code to get even more and then you can even focus in on a particular file that you want to look at. And all this can be done with a GUI as well, so that if you're not comfortable with the command line, though I think I would encourage people to explore using the command line, because I think you understand Git even more. And so again, there's no way in an hour that could I tell you everything you need to know about Git. What I really wanted to express here was the importance of branching, not necessarily how to tell you how to make branches, but shoot me an email and I could help you understand some of these concepts. But the concept of branching is cheap. Do it often. If you're ever unsure of what the right thing, how to commit your code or the right way to do things, make a branch, because then if you make a mistake, you can throw away that branch easily, go back to the other branch, and like, oh, I never made that mistake. So it follows under my philosophy of measuring 3 times, cutting once. And then the other one is making good commits and make them readable to the wider community when they apply to the wider community, and to your team when they apply to just really your team. So the other thing as a Moodle administrator that you have to think about are scale and performance. You need to be able to plan, test, and monitor. And I can show you some of the monitoring tools that we use. We're actually hosted in AWS, And so we get a ton load of monitoring tools for free, but there are a lot of tools out there. But I will say, if you're new, start small. Don't think you have to do everything at once. Start small. Install on your desktop. Install on a test server. And I just throw this as a side comment about the Moodle Universal Cache. It is one of the most common areas that people kind of overlook, and it provides the biggest performance. And I would say use Redis for session and application cache. And if you have multiple web servers, split up your caching to make it the most effective that you can. And I guess maybe before I show you some monitoring, I'll actually show you the next slide as well. Some plugins for the admin that I think are real helpful, and I'll show you these as well. At least the first two. I'll just talk in general about these next two. MoodleAdminMadeEasy and Moodle Benchmark. And then configurable reports are handy. We don't actually use them because I tend to just create the SQL and use create my own behind the scenes reports. And then custom SQL, the custom SQL queries report is also handy for doing reusable reports. And then to show you some of this stuff in action, if we come over, find my correct window again. If I am, this is our 311 test site, but if I'm here and I can, after I've installed MoodleAdminMadeEasy, click here, and it's actually giving you easy access to the MySQL. So I could look at Moodle course. Here are all the courses. I could easily search for search for the ones that are visible right here. And it takes a little while to learn about the database. And you can do things like delete rows and edit rows directly, which I do not recommend unless you know what you're doing. But on a test site especially, I mean, there's less risk on a test site, and it can give you an understanding, and you can figure out what you're doing here. And even if you do have the configurable reports or the ad hoc SQL queries type plugin, you can figure out the things that you need to know here. So maybe don't go around editing and deleting things, but you can understand, oh, this is the old assignments. You can understand what's going on in your database, and you can get an idea of why things are breaking. And the other one I'd like to show you real quick is, need to move a screen here, is under site administration. If you go to reports, here is the benchmark report. Again, wouldn't just run this willy-nilly on a production site, but this gives you information, and it's talking about the writing file performance, in that this is not good. This is a test site, but even on our production site, the writing file performance that this thing does its test on is not going to be great because we use multiple web servers, and that means that we have to use a distributed file system, and that is never going to be as good as using, performance-wise, as using one big web server. The difference is that the one big web server isn't scalable so easily. You have to buy a new one big web server, or if you have if your one big web server is a virtual machine, you have to work with your IT people, or maybe you can do it to increase the amount of CPU and memory and everything. But the advantage of having multiple little web servers is reliability. If one goes down, your whole site isn't down. And so that's one of the things is, if you want the fastest site ever, you need one big web server. If you want the most reliable site ever, you need a load balancer and multiple web servers. Those two things are at cross purposes to each other. And those are just two admin plugins out of many, but I think they're two to help you understand your site. And some of these you don't necessarily install on your production site. They might just exist on a test site. And so we are at 1:48. Sorry about the slow start because of my internet. So I think I'm going to jump to questions. And let's see, where do I find? I'm sharing my screen. So remind me when I'm sharing my screen, I need to come up here. And let's look at the chat here real quick. Thank you, Frandy, for posting those links. And sorry about the chat box. I was trying to manage chat since I'd had those internet issues so that I get notified straight away if my, oh yeah. So this is a very good guide right here. Thanks again, Randy. So people, open up your mics and ask questions if you wish to. Sorry, I didn't leave as much time for questions, but also post in the course. I set up a forum, and here's a little fun little activity where you can say what level Moodle admin you are and whether your Moodling amp goes to 11. I see we got people participating. Good. Probably all that downtime at the start, you had nothing to do but twiddle your thumbs. Oh, one new message. So, oh. Yes, Randy does rock. I made a comment in a previous thing that Randy and I are brothers separated before birth. So that's part of the dad joke humor that we learned about in our keynote that we're supposed to include. So now I'm going to try to really be quiet to give people a chance to ask questions. My mother was surprised to hear that. I love it. So nothing, is it a case of like information overload, information overflow?
Hey, Michael. Really appreciate the presentation. I had a question about AWS. I was just wondering how long you've been on AWS. If you could speak to any of that.
Yeah, so we went full-time production fall 2016, and I was experimenting a year beforehand. I definitely have some definite opinions on how to organize your stuff in AWS. one at the time, EFS was still in preview mode when we went live. And for what we needed for Moodle, it was not quite fast enough. I think a lot of people are having success with it now. And so that is something I need to take the time to reevaluate. But I also need to educate myself to, if I'm really going to do a shooting match, we use Gluster, I guess I should say, for our distributed file system. But if I'm actually going to do a shootout, I need to become better and actually have an ability to do like real world testing to actually, instead of just, this is the feel that I have. So I hope that that's helpful. And if you have time throughout the Mountain Moot, I can definitely talk more about my experience about AWS. I've presented and I can actually share, I've done a presentation about AWS and I could actually present, I've done 2 presentations about early on in the AWS and then shortly after we went full-time that I could actually share with you as well.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested, and I'll seek you out. We're looking at, we're kind of working on a proof of concept and looking at EFS as well.
Yeah, and I'd love to go back and forth because, you know, even like since you're in the proof of concept stage, there's like that looking at it with fresh eyes again, that like, oh yeah, and AWS changes so much. There are things that we implemented that there's now an easier way. Backups. I wrote all this code to automate backups, and now that's easier. And so I really need to pull that out of our process and do it the easy way. And this has been at least for a year, if not 2 years now. And so it's like, but of course it's like, well, it works now and we have bigger fish to fry, right? So it's one of those things. And then, so Gina is asking, do you recommend using long-term support versions of Moodle or upgrading to the most current version? And I think both are valid. That's kind of a cheesy way to avoid really answering the question. We update once a year, and so we're not staying just with the LTS versions. We update in the fall, so we're hitting the 3.3, 3.5, 3.7, 3.9, 3.11 versions. We do that because we think we're a big enough shop that I think we feel like it's not too much work to update at that pace. We don't have that many customizations. The more customizations you'll have, the harder it is to do upgrades, though Git and modern development has improved that. I think long-term support can be good. If you're not updating that often or don't feel comfortable doing it that often, I think stick with the long-term support versions. But that said, then you're biting a bigger chunk of changes each time. So that's the advantage to updating more often. Yeah, and I see Jeremy, I just noticed, I thought his was a question, but he is, I would probably agree with everything that he's saying. And that's why we're on the odd versions. They release in the spring. We are updating every week or two our test site. And one of the things to be aware of that I've just noticed in updating our sites is the Moodle mobile plugin is updating to, I was going to say Iconic, but I think it's actually Ionic 5. And not every plugin is going to use Ionic, but if it does, you need to check to see if they're updating their code. And that's where looking in the repository can be handy. And if I get back, maybe I should. Oh, if I get here, I have to just remember which repository. Maybe I won't be able to find it fast enough, but again, if you catch me or make a post to the forum about that, I could actually show you this comment. And this is just something I was noticing just recently with all these updates to Ionic. So we're getting really close to time. I don't know if there's any more questions. Be sure to post in the forum if you do. I'll be sure to answer questions. And I will be participating in the games night tonight, but there'll be a lot of social time. So come hook up with me there. Maybe we can form an AWS working group or some other issue tracking working group to work through some of our issues. And thank you for all attending. Thank you, Gus.
Thank you, Michael.